In this video, I'm going to be tackling a bunch of questions that I found difficult to answer in the past. Things like, how do you choose your colors? Why do my colors clash? Why are my colors boring? What does it mean to get your values right? Or is there an easier way to explain color theory? Because if I see one more color wheel and a bunch of terms like primary and complementary that I already know, but they don't seem to be helping me, can you please help me understand this? I'm so frustrated. Or something like that. We're going to start with a simple exercise that might seem very out of place, but bear with me, it's important. If you understand this, I think you'll be more comfortable working with color by the end of this video. That's a big promise, I know, so let's get started. I'm going to draw some spikes across this page. Now, your job is to make one of these spikes stand out more than the rest. So what are your options? Well, you could make one taller. That'll make it stand out. You can make one shorter. That'll make it stand out. What's the worst thing you could do if you wanted one of these spikes to stand out? The worst thing you could do is to make them all the exact same size. Nothing stands out. Nothing's interesting. Now, you could also affect what's around the spike that you want to appear to stand out. So if I do a whole lot of really small ones, one big one stands out. So on my spectrum of options here, what do I have? On one end, make them all the same size. Nothing's going to stand out. Nothing's going to be interesting. Or I could flatten out everything, make one spike. That obviously stands out. In fact, when the area around it is flat, it really doesn't take much effort at all to make a little spike stand out. But can you see how in order for one of these spikes to get noticed, there has to be something distinct about it. It just needs to be different. And when there's a lot of activity immediately around it, it becomes more difficult to determine which one is tallest. We can still tell this middle spike is taller, but it's really not that distinct from the spikes around it. So maybe we create a little space around it instead. That seems to help. Now, why are we here talking about spikes on a graph? All those ideas I just discussed, all those different ways of making one spike stand out is exactly how you go about creating emphasis on a canvas with contrast. So starting with value, because that's the most important aspect of color. This is a cover that I did recently, and I've put it in black and white just to illustrate this. I'm also going to limit what we can see to just this most important area of the canvas to show you where this effect is strongest. So imagine that I want to take a measurement of the value right across the center of this image along this red line, as if it was a graph. So we're starting on the left side, and we're about at this value. And then we got a little spike there where the smoke is, and then it gets dark again. And it gets a little bit brighter again, and then it gets a little bit darker, and then it keeps getting brighter and brighter and brighter all the way to the top. It's nearly white right here. And then we get a sudden drop off into this really dark color on her head. All of this is pretty dark. And then we hit this point right here. It gets really bright again. And it subtly trails off, getting darker and darker until we get to the edge of the image over here. So on our little graph here, where are the biggest changes in value? The biggest changes are right here in the center, right where our focal point is. We have almost the entire range of value from lightest to dark. There's 10 different values here. So if I were to give this a score, we'll just call that 10. Now, in the areas of the image that are less important, we have values that are much closer together. The measurement of contrast between the two values gets smaller and smaller as I get into less interesting areas of the canvas. So that's the place of the image where the contrast is highest. What about the areas right around that? How does the graph change? What if we look down here? Can you tell the difference already? We have a much narrower range of value here. We've got some lights, we've got some darks, but there's not very much of each. Most of it falls into a very similar value range. Yes, she's still darker, but there's none of that really, really bright light that we saw in the background before. What about just above it? It's really a very similar thing here. Yes, it's a little bit darker on this side, but as we go across the middle, the values stay very similar. Yes, there are a few light spots, but not those big light spots against the big dark spots like we saw in the last one. So overall, in this section, we have a relatively narrow range of value changes. So once I became aware of this and realized that I was doing this in my own work without really being conscious of it, I started looking for it in other places and started seeing it in a lot of different art. Which got me to thinking, if this was some sort of formula for creating focus and emphasis, surely someone has turned this into some algorithm and just weaponized it, right? Yeah. I was watching Frozen 2 around the same time, and this movie is full of examples of these same principles at work, because here they can control every single aspect of every pixel you see on the screen. So of course they would use all of these techniques. So again, I put this in black and white to make it clearer, but you can notice how there's a very subtle value change through here. We're getting lighter and lighter and lighter and really bright until the brightest spot on the image. And where is it? It's exactly where they want you to look, right on his face. And then what happens? The value drops off suddenly. It gets darker. And throughout the entire rest of the image, it gets a little lighter here and here, but it just gets darker and darker and darker all the way to the other side of the panel. So the only place where a light this bright appears next to something this dark is right there on his face. His shirt is darker than his face, but the light here is not as bright as it is here. In fact, the focus on this page is so strong that you don't even notice the fact that they sort of gave him antlers here, which if you haven't seen the show, he's friends with a reindeer. So to tie this back into those original questions, like how do I choose my colors? I'm making sure that my emphasis area of the canvas, or my focus of the canvas, has that nice range of value. But you can't have something with a lot of contrast if you don't have something without very much. You can't have something that's important without something that's less important. So I'm making sure that all of the areas of the canvas that I want you to look past, that are just there to help support my focal point, they're in a narrow range of these values. The parts that I want people to notice, I make sure they have a wide range of values. Now, one of the interesting things about this is that the inverse is also true. We can have huge swings of value, but if we have one area that isn't, it's going to draw our attention. This works in both directions. Here's a quick example to show you what I mean. So this is a very low contrast checkerboard pattern. We've got 50% gray and a slightly darker gray below it. If I take one spot on that graph and increase the contrast, brighter brights and darker darks, it obviously grabs your attention. It also is grabbing your attention because it's just the only thing like that on the canvas. Because watch what happens. If I invert this and then introduce a low contrast area, it's going to stand out too. Why? Because it's distinct, because it's different. Now, when you ask, why do my colors seem to be clashing? Check your values. Are they all in a huge range of value? Is there no place where the values are closer together? If your colors are boring, are they all in a narrow range on your canvas? Do you have bright brights and dark darks where it matters? One of the most exciting things about this concept to me is how this doesn't just apply to value. Value is only one of three aspects of color. We could apply the same graph to saturation. If we go back and look at this cover again, drawn by Adam Gorham, by the way. Sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier. Now this time, instead of just isolating the values, I'm isolating the saturation. Now I had to choose a color to put over this, and I just chose an orange because why not? But all of these colors have the exact same hue. They all have that same orange hue. But what you'll see is I'm layering the saturation the same way. I've got very low saturation close to gray along the edges. In the one place I want you to notice more than anything, I have the most saturation on the entire image. In the second most important area of the image, I have the second most saturation, the sky here next to this robot. As a side note, this is a great example of why cool and warm is not what you think it is. There are areas of this image that absolutely feel warmer than others. Her face and shawl here feel warmer than this. They're both orange. They're the exact same hue. One just has a lot less saturation. And some of you may have figured this out by now, but the exact same rules apply to hue too. Now I had to pick some color for the baseline, but let's say it's green. The colors that are close to this on the color picker have less contrast than the ones that are further apart. Now for hues, you're probably used to seeing it more like this. Same principles apply. Colors that are closer together have less contrast than colors that are far apart. Think about it like a speedometer. From one color to the next, the more distance you have, the more contrast you're going to have. You can't get more contrast than two complementary hues, all other things being equal. How do we apply that to this cover? This is a version of it just isolating the hues alone. Now, as I color pick along this outside edge here, I want you to look at that color wheel. Now, it's jumping all over the place, or the color slider over there. But look at where they're all close to. They're all in that kind of blue to green to yellow range, right? All the background is in a very narrow range on the color wheel, okay? If I drag the other side, you'll see it's more the same over here. We're basically bouncing between that blue and green and yellow, except on the character here, which is in warm, more purple areas of the color wheel. I put in just enough blue to make sure she, feels like she fits in the environment, but these purples are opposite of these yellows and greens. So now you guys have seen 3 different ways that we can use those spectrums of hue and value and saturation to create contrast and focus. When you layer them all on top of each other, it can really give you some really cool results. So hopefully you can see that here in the final image. We have the darkest parts of the image next to the lightest parts of the image. I've got the most saturated parts of the image surrounded by the less saturated parts of the image. And I've got the warm parts of the image surrounded by cooler parts of the image. So if you want to know how I choose my colors, this is the formula that's running in my head. We've really just scratched the surface of this today because honestly, this sort of balance of contrast applies in so many other areas too. You could take this same spectrum, put hard edges across the top and soft edges across the bottom. Cool, warm, straight, curved. Those are all the 5 really biggest fundamentals of art. The 3 aspects of color, hue, saturation, and value, edges, and shapes. That's everything. I'm thinking about doing an entire series on this. You guys let me know if this makes sense. I have been kicking around this idea for about 18 months and kept trying to find ways to make color theory simpler because I think the way that we teach it is overcomplicated. We've added a whole lot of terms. We've got terminology for everything. And you can go watch 100 basics videos, quote unquote, and you'll come away knowing what primary colors are and complementary colors are. But are those basics the basics if you don't come away with them knowing how to apply them? But once I realized that I really want to make this as simple as I possibly can, it kind of led me down a strange path where I ended up thinking about Caveman, because long before Newton discovered the color wheel or whatever, people were making art and art that looked good. And if you take that back far enough, you end up with some caveman teaching his caveman son about how to paint on cave walls. And they didn't have all this terminology. How did they talk about it? And the powerful thing about this is that once you've established your big shapes and you've decided what's important and what's not, but it helps narrow your color choices. If this is something that you guys respond to, then I'm looking forward to doing more of this. I'm also afraid this might just not make any sense at all, and it only makes sense in my head. That's a possibility too. I've made videos like that before. So I thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you learned something today, let me know. Do you want to see more like this? Was this too confusing? But we could dive into 10 videos talking about this stuff. So I want to know what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching. Click all the buttons around here I need you to click. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.